Listen to me very carefully. Your brain is not broken. It's wired to obsess over negativity, and that's not a flaw. It's a survival mechanism that's now destroying your mental health. I'm going to tell you exactly why that happens, and more importantly, what you need to do about it. No fluff, no feel-good nonsense. Just the neuroscience and psychology you desperately need to understand. I'm a psychologist, and I've spent years watching people torture themselves with their own thoughts. And here's what nobody's telling you. You are complicit in your own suffering, not because you're weak, not because you're damaged, but because you don't understand how your brain actually works. And that ends today. Let me start with a fact that's going to make some of you uncomfortable. Your brain is approximately 2 million years old in its architecture, but you're trying to use it in a world that's barely 200 years into industrialization. You're running ancient software on modern problems. And that mismatch, that's where your anxiety, your depression, your intrusive thoughts, your catastrophizing, all of it comes from. Your brain evolved during a time when negativity bias wasn't just helpful, it was essential for survival. The humans who survived weren't the optimists who assumed that rustling in the bushes was just the wind. The survivors were the paranoid ones, the anxious ones, the people who assumed threat first and asked questions later. Those are your ancestors. Their hypervigilant, threat-detecting, worst-case scenario-obsessed brains are the ones that made it. And you inherited that circuitry. This is called negativity bias, and it's hardwired into your neural architecture. Your amygdala, that almond-shaped structure deep in your limbic system, processes negative information faster and more intensely than positive information. Studies show that negative stimuli produce more neural activity than equally intense positive stimuli. Your brain literally gives more weight, more attention, more processing power to what's wrong than to what's right. And here's where it gets worse. Your brain doesn't just prioritize negative information in the moment, it stores it more efficiently. Negative experiences create stronger, more durable memories than positive ones. This is why you can receive 10 compliments and 1 criticism, and guess which one you'll replay in your head at 3 in the morning? The criticism, every single time. This isn't a personality defect. This is neurochemistry. When you experience something negative, your brain releases stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, that actually enhance memory consolidation. Your brain is chemically ensuring that you remember threats, failures, rejections, and dangers more vividly than successes. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes perfect sense. Remembering where the predator attacked you is more important for survival than remembering where you found some nice berries. But you're not running from predators anymore. You're sitting in traffic, you're reading emails, you're scrolling through social media, and your ancient threat detection system is firing off alarm signals, as if every criticism, every setback, every uncomfortable interaction is a life or death situation. Now, some of you are already getting defensive. You're thinking, but I have real problems. My anxiety is justified. My negative thoughts are based in reality. And you're right. I'm not dismissing your pain. I'm not telling you to slap on a smile and think positive. What I'm telling you is this. Your brain is amplifying those real problems through a neurological megaphone, and you need to understand that mechanism before you can address it. Let me explain exactly how this works in your daily life. You wake up in the morning, and within seconds, your brain begins its threat assessment. Even before you're fully conscious, your amygdala is scanning for danger. Did you sleep poorly? That's a threat to your functioning. Do you have a difficult meeting today? Threat. Did someone not respond to your text last night? Social threat. Is your bank account lower than you'd like? Resource threat. Your brain categorizes all of these as dangers. And here's the critical part. It doesn't differentiate between a physical threat and a psychological one. The same neural pathways that would activate if you encountered a wild animal activate when you think about an awkward conversation you had 3 years ago. Your body floods with the same stress hormones. Your heart rate increases. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your muscles tense. This is why you can lie in a completely safe bed, in a locked house, with no immediate danger anywhere near you, and still feel absolutely terrified. Your brain is responding to thought-based threats as if they were physical realities. And this is where the real damage happens, you start thinking about your negative thoughts. You begin to meta-worry. You're not just anxious, you're anxious about being anxious. You're not just sad, you're ashamed of being sad. You're not just having intrusive thoughts. You're terrified that having those thoughts means something terrible about who you are. This is called secondary suffering, and it's where most of your actual psychological pain lives. The primary emotion, the initial fear, sadness, or anger, is often brief and manageable. But the story you tell yourself about that emotion, the judgment you place on it, the catastrophic conclusions you draw from it, that's where you get stuck. Your brain loves patterns. It's a pattern recognition machine. And once it identifies a pattern, even a destructive one, it reinforces it. Every time you have a negative thought and then spiral into self-criticism about having that thought, you're strengthening that neural pathway. You're literally training your brain to respond to negativity with more negativity. Neuroscientists call this neurons that fire together, wire together. It's Hebbian learning at the neural level. Every thought you think, every emotional response you have, every behavioral pattern you engage in is carving pathways in your brain. And if your dominant pathways are negative, ruminating, catastrophizing ones, then that's your default mode. That's what your brain will automatically do. Here's what makes this even more insidious. Your brain doesn't just remember negative events more strongly, it actively seeks them out. This is called confirmation bias, and it works in tandem with negativity bias to create a nearly perfect storm of psychological suffering. Once your brain decides on a narrative, I'm not good enough, people don't like me, I always fail, it will filter all incoming information through that lens. It will notice, remember, and emphasize any evidence that confirms that belief, and it will dismiss, forget, or minimize any evidence that contradicts it. You could succeed at 99 things and fail at one, and your brain will focus on the failure. Not because you're defective, but because that's what brains do. They look for threats, for problems, for what needs to be fixed. Survival required vigilance about what was wrong, not celebration of what was right. Now let me address the critics directly, because I know exactly what some of you are thinking. You're thinking this is just toxic positivity dressed up in neuroscience language. You're thinking I'm dismissing real mental illness, real trauma, real systemic problems that cause legitimate suffering. I am not. Clinical depression is real. Anxiety disorders are real. PTSD is real. Trauma changes brain structure. Chronic stress damages the hippocampus. Adverse childhood experiences create lasting neurobiological changes. I am not suggesting that you can simply think your way out of mental illness. What I am saying is this: even if you have a clinical diagnosis, even if you've experienced significant trauma, even if you're facing real and serious life challenges, your brain's negativity bias is still making it worse. It's amplifying your suffering beyond what the situation warrants. And you have more agency in that process than you think. Understanding the neuroscience doesn't minimize your pain. It gives you a foothold for changing it. Let me give you a practical example. Let's say you have social anxiety. You're at a party and you say something that you immediately worry sounded stupid. Your amygdala registers this as a social threat. Cortisol floods your system. Your brain begins rapid-fire threat assessment. Everyone thinks I'm an idiot. They're all judging me. I've ruined my reputation. No one will want to talk to me again. I should leave immediately. Now here's what's actually happening neurologically. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thinking, perspective taking, and executive function, is being hijacked by your limbic system. The emotional, reactive part of your brain is drowning out the logical part. And here's the crucial bit. The more you engage with those catastrophic thoughts, the more you rehearse them, the more you treat them as accurate reflections of reality, the stronger that pattern becomes. You're essentially training your brain that social situations equal danger. The alternative is not to pretend you're not anxious. It's not to force yourself to think positive thoughts. It's to recognize what's happening. My brain is interpreting this as a threat. My amygdala is activated. These thoughts are a product of my threat detection system, not an accurate assessment of reality. That recognition alone, that metacognitive awareness, activates your prefrontal cortex. It creates distance between you and your thoughts. You're no longer drowning in the anxiety, you're observing it. This is the foundation of every effective psychological intervention we have. Cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, mindfulness-based stress reduction, all of them work because they teach you to observe your thoughts rather than become them. But here's why most people fail at this. They want immediate relief. They want the negative thoughts to stop. They want to feel better right now. And when the techniques don't produce instant results, they give up. Let me be absolutely clear. Your brain's negativity bias took millions of years to evolve and your entire lifetime to reinforce. You're not going to rewire it in a week. Neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to change, is real, but it requires consistency, repetition, and time. Every time you notice a negative thought and choose not to engage with it, you're weakening that neural pathway. Every time you redirect your attention to something neutral or positive, you're strengthening an alternative pathway. But you have to do this hundreds, thousands of times before it becomes your new default. This is not a quick fix. This is a fundamental restructuring of how your brain processes information. And it is absolutely possible, but only if you commit to it with the same intensity that your brain commits to negativity. Now let's talk about rumination, because this is where negativity bias does its deepest damage. Rumination is repetitive, passive focus on negative thoughts and feelings. It's replaying the same scenario over and over in your mind. It's the mental equivalent of picking at a scab. It feels like you're doing something productive, like you're solving a problem, but you're actually just making it worse. Research shows that rumination is one of the strongest predictors of depression and anxiety. It's more predictive than the actual negative events you've experienced, because rumination keeps those events alive in your mind, keeps your stress response activated, keeps your brain in threat mode. And here's what your brain doesn't want you to know. Rumination serves a purpose. It gives you the illusion of control. If you keep thinking about the problem, analyzing it, predicting every possible outcome, rehearsing every possible scenario, you feel like you're preparing yourself. You feel like you're protecting yourself from future harm, but you're not. You're just traumatizing yourself repeatedly with your own thoughts. The neuroscience is clear. Rumination doesn't lead to problem solving. It leads to cognitive rigidity, emotional dysregulation, and increased stress hormone production. It actually impairs your ability to think clearly and make good decisions. So why does your brain keep doing it? Because it's confusing rumination with preparation. Your ancient brain thinks that by constantly rehearsing threats, you'll be better equipped to handle them. But modern threats, social rejection, financial stress, work pressure, existential anxiety, don't benefit from that kind of repetitive mental rehearsal. You need to interrupt the pattern, and the only way to do that is to catch yourself in the act and consciously redirect your attention, not to suppress the thoughts. Suppression doesn't work and often makes it worse, but to acknowledge them and then shift your focus to something concrete and present. This is where mindfulness becomes not just helpful, but essential. Mindfulness is not about achieving some blissed out state of permanent calm. It's about training your attention. It's about recognizing when your mind has wandered into rumination and gently bringing it back to the present moment. And before you dismiss this as New Age nonsense, understand that there are hundreds of peer-reviewed studies demonstrating that mindfulness practice literally changes brain structure. It increases gray matter density in the prefrontal cortex and hippocampus, areas involved in emotional regulation and learning. It decreases gray matter density in the amygdala, the threat detection center. You can physically change your brain's negativity bias through consistent practice, but you have to actually do it, reading about it, understanding it intellectually, agreeing with the concept. None of that changes anything. You have to sit with the discomfort of redirecting your attention away from negative thoughts over and over and over again until new pathways are established. Let me tell you what happens when you don't do this work. Your negativity bias doesn't stay static. It compounds, it generalizes, it spreads into every area of your life. You start with specific worries, legitimate concerns about real things. But over time, if those thoughts go unchecked, they become pervasive patterns. You stop worrying about specific situations and start believing global narratives about yourself and the world. Nothing ever works out for me. I always mess things up. The world is a dangerous place. People can't be trusted. These become core beliefs, and core beliefs are extraordinarily resistant to change because they filter everything. They create self-fulfilling prophecies. If you believe you always fail, you'll interpret ambiguous outcomes as failures. You'll remember your failures more vividly than your successes, and you'll unconsciously engage in behaviors that increase the likelihood of failure. This is learned helplessness, and it's one of the most well-documented psychological phenomena we have. When your brain believes that outcomes are beyond your control, it stops trying, it conserves energy, it gives up. And here's the cruel irony. That giving up, that resignation, that learned helplessness Your brain experiences it as safety. Because if you're not trying, you can't fail. If you're not hoping, you can't be disappointed. If you're not connecting, you can't be rejected. Your negativity bias has convinced your brain that the safest option is to expect the worst, assume the worst, and protect yourself from hope. This is not wisdom. This is not realism. This is not being prepared. This is your threat detection system running unchecked, and it will destroy your life if you let it. So what do? First, you accept that your brain is not your enemy, but it is also not infallible. Your thoughts are not facts. Your feelings are not evidence. Your brain's interpretations of events are biased, filtered, and often catastrophically inaccurate. Second, you learn to observe your thoughts without believing them. This is the single most important skill you can develop. When a negative thought arises, instead of engaging with it, debating it, or trying to suppress it, you simply notice it. I'm having the thought that I'm going to fail. I'm having the thought that nobody likes me. I'm having the thought that something terrible is going to happen. That simple shift from I am to I'm having the thought that creates psychological distance. It reminds you that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that observes thoughts. Third, you deliberately cultivate attention to neutral and positive information. Not fake positivity, not pretending problems don't exist, but actively training your brain to notice what's working, what's stable, what's good. This feels unnatural at first because your brain isn't wired for it, but that's exactly why you need to do it. You're creating new neural pathways, establishing new patterns, teaching your brain that safety can be found in the present moment, not just in constant threat surveillance. Fourth, you get help when you need it. If your negativity is so overwhelming that you can't function, if you're experiencing suicidal thoughts, if your anxiety or depression is severe, you need professional intervention, therapy, medication if appropriate. There is no shame in this. Your brain is an organ, and sometimes organs need medical treatment. But whether you're in therapy or not, whether you're on medication or not, you still have to do this work. No one else can observe your thoughts for you. No one else can redirect your attention for you. No one else can build new neural pathways for you. This is your brain. This is your life. And you have far more power to shape both than your negativity bias wants you to believe. Your brain loves negative thoughts because for millions of years, negative thoughts kept your ancestors alive. But you're not just trying to survive anymore. You're trying to live. You're trying to thrive. You're trying to build relationships, pursue goals, find meaning, experience joy. And none of that happens if you let your ancient threat detection system run your life. So here's what I need you to understand. You are not broken. Your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do. But evolution doesn't care about your happiness. It cares about your survival. And in the modern world, those are not the same thing. You have to intervene. You have to take conscious control of your attention, your thoughts, your responses. Not perfectly, not every time, but consistently enough to create new patterns, new pathways, new possibilities. This is the work. This is the path. And it's available to you right now, in this moment, regardless of what you've been through or what you're currently facing. Your brain loves negative thoughts, but you don't have to.